Hello. Might be a long video, but there's lots to talk about. First off, one of the most consistent points of feedback I've gotten is how the player controller is just not so good. I'll admit I've struggled a bit with this, probably due to a kind of tunnel vision, since I'm constantly jumping in, testing this, that, the other thing, and I don't quite register the issues as well as maybe I should. That said, not too long after this video goes live, I will have a new patch out for the demo that makes some major changes that will hopefully make things feel a bit more deliberate. Any kind of feedback would be much appreciated to see if things are going in the right direction. In short, the updated version implements considerably more drag, reduces speed overall, and is much less slippery, so you shouldn't be Tony Hawking off of every little bump in the terrain. Jumping should be more consistent as well, allowing more functional disembarks. That said, there are a couple of known issues I'm still working on. The character is much more likely to get stuck on abrupt elevation changes and can also stick to walls a bit in some cases, as well as when on board a ship, there are some cases that can cause the player to sink through colliders, requiring you to kind of jump to reset. So I'm definitely still working on these things, but I would like to see if players like the direction it's going or have any additional feedback. The upcoming update will also introduce a number of changes to scripts, to assets, and world management. This should reduce draw calls significantly in most cases, as well as reduce unnecessary script operations that should save a few milliseconds here and there. Lastly, I've also implemented world curvature. This is somewhat exaggerated, as with the relatively low distances between islands, a realistic figure was not really noticeable. For context, the spawn point is only about 3.5k from the 300 or so meter tall watcher. So at eye level, I napkin math that to be around 0.8 meters of drop, which is not really visible at all. So I've increased this by around 5 times. So it is at least noticeable, especially on the more distant islands like Bathus, which drops around 50 meters from the spawn point, as it's around 12 kilometers away. Next up is new ship time. Filling the role of a Kalian starter ship is the Padawakang. This is a simple, dependable vessel. The design differs from other Kalian ships in the game world, that is. These are the signature ship of a Kalian vassal state that once operated these ships on huge inland lakes. The design survived due to being simple to build and simpler to maintain than the more ornate junk-style hulls. In practical terms, the reason for this is just I wanted a bit of variety and something a little bit different, so moving to a more Indonesian-style vessel than a Chinese or Japanese style. This will have twin-boomed rectangular sails that function almost as a cross between lateen and battened sails. It will also be steered via twin steering oars rather than the more conventional rudder. As a starter ship, it's going to be larger than the Caravel, but less capable in weather and quite slow and a bit cumbersome for maneuvering. Once complete, you'll be able to buy or build these, as well as the other Kalian-styled ships, from the shipyard that is shaping up in the far shore. Lastly, a little bit about my plans for release. I'd initially planned on waiting for the game to be fairly close to content complete prior to release, but I've withdrawn from that somewhat for a couple of reasons. With so many variables in play, I feel it might lessen the bug fix and tuning race some with simply fewer things to test. That said, I do worry about leaving a bit of a sour taste with a buggy experience that doesn't have a lot of content. So it is something I've been struggling with a bit. My aim right now is to release later this year with the following: 6 playable ships with 3 from each of the major in-game cultures and their vassals. At least 3 more are planned for both existing cultures and others that are not currently represented. At launch, that will be the Caravel, Zebek, and Setia for the Imperials, and the Junk, Great Ship, and the Padawakang that you just saw, which will fill the role of starter ship for the Kalians. I do try to lean away from the idea of ship progression being linear, as in I don't want the player to be forced to upgrade to larger ships, while at the same time not wanting the large ships to be overly tedious to manage. So there is much balance to go, but my aim is for every ship to be perfectly viable for long-term play and ultimately down to player preference. Apart from ships, there are currently 7 islands planned to be present at launch, with quite a few more expected later on. This number does not include a handful of, shall we say, special locations. In terms of features that are planned, but will probably not be present or present in a very incomplete form at the time of launch, the main gameplay elements are fast travel. This will function sort of similarly to overworld map gameplay, such as those seen in games like Owlcat's Pathfinder series or many older RPGs. That is, you are not simply picking a destination and teleporting there. Rather, going any distance will cost both time and provisions, especially on larger ships. Things like wear and tear are also planned. Next up would be encounters. These would accompany the fast travel as previously mentioned. What these are would be semi-random events that could interrupt fast travel. This could be things like other ships, special weather events, or really any kind of tailored experience that isn't practical for general open world appearance. Third would be combat. A degree of this is planned, but there are many decisions to make before I talk about it too much. Fourth would be ship modification. This will be a somewhat limited affair, but I do plan for the shipyard to offer hull and rigging changes for some ships. This won't be as flexible or as complex as the kind of modification possible in games like Sailwind. Rather, I plan on allowing things like full rig conversions. So, a Caravel with a square mainsail and headsail, for example, but not the ability to set up each mast however you want. Rather, flipping between ship variants instead of a more point-by-point control. Lastly would be story progression and overall gameplay goals. We'll get more to that another time. Now, after these things, there are always other things I'd like to expand to, and this will ultimately depend on how well development continues. Consider them as a wish list at the current time. This would include things like a VR mode, NPCs, bespoke music, and better textures or the hiring of a more capable texture artist, as that's something I'm not particularly strong with. To wrap this section up, I'm hopeful that it's accepted for the game to release a little more bare than it could be, but we shall see. As a consequence of the reduced content at launch, I do plan to release at a lower price point than I'd originally intended, as well as whatever kind of price I expect at any kind of 1.0 release. As well, I do intend to keep the demo supported for the foreseeable future. I'm cautious to give a hard number, but likely it'll end up in the $12 to $15 range in US dollars. Additionally, if you have contributed financially through Patreon at any point, I intend to deliver a free key. You do not need to be a contributing member at release, just anyone who has joined any tier other than the free tier at some point. I still have to work out a little bit how to handle that through Steam, but I don't expect any major issues. So with that, I wanted to thank everyone for watching. I'd originally intended to have a update to the demo out later today that includes all of the aforementioned changes to the character controller, but I'd still like to spend a bit more time with it, as there's a couple of really annoying issues that can happen from time to time, so I want to try to sort those out first, but I do plan for the update to be coming out fairly soon. With that said, again, thank you for everyone who's watched. Thank you to the Patreons again. I'll be updating the list of callouts with the next video out, but any kind of contribution has been very much appreciated over the past few months. And hopefully I will have some more news out shortly.